Good afternoon and evening, everybody. It's David Schlotthauer here in the home weather office for New Year's Day, January 1st, 2024 at about 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. In today's update, we are keeping an eye on some big storm systems for the Midwest, for the eastern half of the U.S., where we could see some severe weather, very heavy snowfall, maybe some icy conditions and some slush as well, leading to potential power outages. So in today's update, we will break down all those details. So with that being said, here's a look at the latest European model for January the 3rd, 2024 at around about 2 to 3 in the morning, Eastern time, Central time. And what we're seeing here is our first system. This is going to be a coast-to-coast madness because it starts in California here, bringing quite a bit of snowfall and heavy rainfall. This is going to be for Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, possibly an inch or so out of the system, with maybe a foot or more of snowfall for the higher elevations. And I mean, when we talk about high elevations, of course, above 5,000 feet, but the snow level will be down to right around 4,500 to maybe about 5,000 feet. So this is a cooler system, to say the least. But what it's going to do on the other side of the Rockies is going to be something that we don't normally see. By Thursday morning, it moves into northern New Mexico as well as Colorado into the Four Corners region. You can see the system right here. I'm circling it in black, and that's where we're going to see quite a bit of snowfall, possibly a foot or so in some areas, maybe some gusty winds too, and some cooler temperatures with that. But once this gets into the plains, it is really going to get dynamic because we have the Gulf moisture moving up from the Gulf of Mexico, and that really adds more dynamics to the system in play. And so latent heat release moving northward squeezes out a lot of the moisture because we have baroclinic ascent here, and I'll show you the Jetstream pattern here in a little bit to show you that. But this is the system that's in California Tuesday night and a Wednesday, and then it moves into Louisiana, eastern Texas by Friday night into Saturday morning. So January the 5th and the 6th here, we are looking at a pretty potent system, moderate to heavy rainfall, maybe some severe weather, but it's going to be about the rainfall that could come down with this, which could lead to some flooding concerns, maybe some flash flooding potential. And then by Saturday morning, January the 6th here, it's over Georgia, over North Carolina, over Tennessee. So if you are in Atlanta, Georgia, if you are in along the Appalachians there, if you are in northern Florida, even central Florida, you're going to get the cold front as it passes its way through. Not a super dynamic system by any means. I mean, I've seen much more dynamic systems. The one that you're about to see by the early to the middle of next week is much more dynamic than this one. We'll get to that in just a second. But long story short, the first system here, pretty impactful now. The Euro has trended further north with this one in the last couple of runs. We will show you the GFS here really quickly. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail because I want to keep these videos rather short. I don't want to make these videos 30 minutes long. It's just so much information, right? But you can see the GFS here on the 18Z run, the 12Z run. It's kind of woggling around a little bit. Wow, very dynamic situation here on the 06Z run. The 18Z run, I don't know what it's doing. It's kind of going a little collaborated with the system versus the Euro, probably a little bit more dynamic in some degree, and I think the Euro sees it a little bit better. So once this now gets into the northeast and across the eastern seaboard, this is for Saturday. Enough cold air on the northern side of this will get infiltrated as we get moisture getting sputtered around. So we're going to get moisture kind of going all the way around on the northern side of the system over the cold sector, and that's going to really squeeze out a lot of precipitation. We're going to see a lot of big snowflakes, so a lot of accumulation is certainly possible to likely at this point when we look at the deterministic. But look at that snowfall. Wow, going to be really intense snowfall rates over Pennsylvania, downtown New York, along the I-35 or I-95 corridor. I said I-35. I don't know why I said that, but I-95 stretching across the northeast there into the mid-Atlantic. Wow, it's going to be a a little bit of a roller coaster ride with that system, and then that moves out before we have our second system. Now, while the second system does not look to be as strong for the west, like California, it's still going to bring maybe about a foot of snow for the higher elevations there of the Sierra, maybe a few inches for Nevada, and maybe about a tenth to a quarter of an inch of rainfall for California. It's going to bring a lot colder air, and when cold meets hot, or when cold air meets warm air, when there's a lot of moisture, especially over the Gulf of Mexico, things are going to get really into chaos mode. Watch this. So you can see here for Monday, this first system is out of here. The second system knocking on the doorstep for the Four Corners for January the 8th. And then look at this system. It is going to go gangbusters. This is for January the 8th. By Monday night, take note on how dynamic this could actually end up being. Here's your warm front right here, draped across the northeastern Gulf of Mexico, all the way from central Florida into Louisiana. We really got to watch where this warm front sets up. If it's able to lift northward along the baroclinic boundary here with a lot of directional wind shear, and we'll look at that in a second, we could see a pretty hefty severe weather event setting up for the deep south regions. It all depends on this surface low and how deep it's able to get, and if it's able to gain latitude quicker than if it does this. Because if it does this and it follows this path, then the warm front may not be able to advect northward enough to present the threat for some surface-based storms that do fire along that warm front. But either way, very dynamic system. By Tuesday morning, heavy snow, you bet, over Oklahoma, over Kansas, over northern Missouri, potentially in Iowa, as well as northern Illinois and Indiana. Again, there's still a lot of uncertainty in the models on exactly where this is going to set up, how quick it's going to deepen under this environment, but either way you put it, there has been this system in the models for a while, especially the Euro and GFS, the American model, showing quite a bit of snowfall, and I mean a lot of snowfall. It really just depends on how much moisture is able to get flung around onto the colder side of the system, and how cool does it, or how much colder air comes in out of the north to filtrate this kind of come in on the southern side to help wrap a lot of this moisture around it to present the threat for heavy snowfall. But wow, tight isobars here, very deep surface low at 976 will certainly lead to very strong winds, blowing snow, drifting snow, whiteout conditions, blizzard conditions. I don't think we're going to see a historic blizzard, but it's going to be a big one. And then that system is out of here by Thursday morning, January the 11th, before a third one. Yeah, we're going to be in this active pattern potentially even longer than, say, 5 to 7 days out, maybe over 10 days, as we are tracking maybe this next system. Now, there's a lot of uncertainty in the numerical models, but maybe sniffing out a third system for the west, for the desert southwest, then eventually into the Midwest. So we might not be done, folks. I'm telling you, 1, 2, 3 punch potentially in the making. So now I did want to show you all the Jetstream energy that is associated with these upper level disturbances. This is the 500 millibar level, which is at around 18,000 feet. And we're looking at wind speed in different colors. The brighter the colors, the stronger the winds are going to be. And so when we look at this, of course, we have more of a split flow here. We have the subtropical jet down here. We have the polar jet kind of up here. We have this kind of innocuous looking kind of transient ridge, kind of low pressure system over the Pacific Northwest, including the Rockies. Then that system de-amplifies, followed by a second little piece of energy, again, that tries to eject out of the Pacific Northwest and quickly dig southeastward into northern Mexico, and then eventually into southern Texas as it gets captured by some of that little system that we're going to get. And then eventually, a little bit of a pinch off with that flow at 107 knots of mid-level flow over the southeastern portion of Georgia, and eventually up into the Midwest, or the kind of the central eastern portion there of the United States, or the eastern seaboard, I should say. But the second system, Okay, let's get forward into that on the GFS. Take a look at this. Me and Ethan were tracking this in my New Year's Eve live stream last night. I hope you all liked that very much. I don't do that very often, but it's a tradition, of course, on the channel. But look at how deep this trough actually is. I mean, your freezing line is, yes, that is southern, southwestern Texas, if not even northern portion of Mexico. No, not New Mexico, northern Mexico. That is awfully far south on the GFS model, and there have been some Willy Wonka crazy runs over the last couple of days, especially look at this one. My gosh, the 06Z run is very ballistic. So long story short, we've got to watch this one. This one has my attention very significantly. Okay, the 18Z run is the 18Z run. I don't know what that's on. This is still far out, so there's a lot of uncertainty, timing issues, amplitude issues. I mean, you can see yesterday's 18Z run, not so big. Tonight's run, or this afternoon's run, definitely more amplified with that very strong mid-level jet streak that rounds the base of that. But especially the 06Z run, we'll see if that actually happens, because if that does, that is a very strong system by all means, with very deep surface low pressure as well as very strong winds. Now, another thing that I want to briefly take note of is the wind direction, speed, and shear with height here, because we did talk about this in last night's stream that the winds on this system, this is again for early next week, we do have southeasterly winds at the surface. We go into the lower portion of the atmosphere. This is at 2,000 feet. It is a little bit more kind of out of the more southeasterly, and then eventually when you get to 850 millibars, yeah, there's a big wind shift. Look at this, by the way, Ethan, when you're watching this video. Look at this. Surface flow in the black arrows, 2,000 foot level winds in the yellow arrow, then 5,000 foot level winds in the orange arrow. You can see how those winds do change with height, streamwise vorticity, we should say. And again, if we get that warm front that is able to advect far enough north here, we could be dealing with a big severe weather event, potentially an outbreak in the far southern tier of the United States because of the flow that is getting involved. A lot of baroclinic lift here, a lot of forcing out ahead of this. We got to watch this one. But we also got to keep an eye on how much snowfall these two storms could actually bring. Well, the first system that I'm really focused on is on the European model here for the Northeast, especially for Maine. I mean, if the European model is on as something new here in its latest deterministic forecast, whoa. I'm telling you, folks, there's going to be a lot of impacts, possibly airport closures, road closures because of the heavy snow all at once. We could be looking at maybe 12 to 18 inches of snow in some of these areas, including the I-95 corridor in northern New Jersey, as well as portions there of downtown New York. Yeah, we cannot ignore this. The 0Z run from last night, way down. So again, we'll see if this sticks to the latest model guidance. The good news is the GFS is still not in agreement with that 12Z output from the Euro, but it also has been kind of trending northward in recent runs here. So again, for the Northeast with the first system, we do have to watch this, because if trends do continue, then we could be talking about a whole different ball game here. With the second system impacting the upper Midwest as well as the high plains, not the upper Midwest, but portions of the Ohio Valley as well as the Great Lakes, could see anywhere between about 12 to 18 inches with that one. That's been going back and forth because it's a little more uncertain. It's a little further out in time. But long story short, the weather pattern is turning a lot more active with some big storms like we were talking about. Also, the threat for freezing rain with the second system, with the first system is also increasing. We could see anywhere between 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch of ice. The Euro is pretty bullish on this one with maybe an inch or so. We look at the GFS model, most likely under 1/2 inch, but it only takes 1/4 of an inch to lead to power outages and some very hazardous road travel, as well as maybe some fallen power lines with this. The amount of sleet that is also expected, anywhere between 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch in central portion of Virginia, western Virginia, or the southern western Virginia state there, as well as western into there of North Carolina, might see about 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch of sleet. Now, finally, I wanted to show you all the rain amounts really quickly here. The first system brings maybe about 2 to 4 inches of rain for Louisiana. And then when you combine this with two systems, we might see as much as 2 to 5 inches. Maybe isolated amounts down here in Florida might see 6+ inches. The GFS model going a little crazy on this one too. Potentially as much as 7 to 8 inches in central and northeastern Georgia and south or northwestern portion there of South Carolina and western North Carolina. So a lot of rain to contend with here and snow in some areas along to go with some damaging winds. Now, really quickly, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here because part of this video, or most of the video, was mainly to talk about the couple of big storms that are going to be happening this weekend and into early next week. So we're going to briefly talk about the temperature anomalies. So red shadings, orange shadings do indicate temperatures above average, while the blue-green shadings are indicating temperatures below average, climatology speaking, for your local area. So of course, not much of an Arctic outbreak. The weather pattern's quiet. Oh, take a deep breath, because wait until you see this. The first system, of course, or the second system, going to drag in more colder air. So temperatures 20 to 30 degrees below average for the desert Southwest, even for the high portions of the high plains, as well as the Pacific Northwest. But that's not it. When we take a look at the GFS, a renewed surgence of colder Arctic air does come back into the forecast. Now, again, if the GFS is right, and this is when we get into fantasy land, you know how the GFS can behave. It could be extremely different from run to run. This is the 18Z run. And a fun fact about the intermediate runs like the 06Z and the 18Z runs are not as accurate as the 0Z and 12Z runs, because these are basically, I'm not saying that this is true or not. I want to be honest here, but not much new data gets fed into the 18 and 06Z global model, especially the GFS. And so, therefore, we have to be a little bit more extra cautious of what we look at here. But if this pans out, again, a what-if situation, we would be looking at some of the coldest temperatures that we have ever witnessed in portions of the United States. And I'm not kidding. This is January the 14th. Big, potentially deadly Arctic outbreak, historically speaking, too, when you look at this. And yeah, that's Indiana right there on January the 15th. And yes, this is for you, Ethan. You might see temperatures -5 to -15 degrees below zero during the day, and overnight lows could be even colder, potentially -15 to -20 degrees below zero. So yeah, how about that? That's cold, isn't it? Now you're gonna all look at this, folks, and be like, oh my gosh, it's serious. Oh my goodness. But you know what the good news is? The good news is the Climate Prediction Center is not that confident on that happening, as you can see here, and they're more confident about it being below average, well, pretty significantly speaking, 80% chances of those temperatures being below average in Southern California, Phoenix, Tucson, very El Nino-like. Sacramento likely to join in on the party with well below average temperature chances likely, versus the Northeast, the Great Lakes, and the Southeast likely to see equal chances to likely chances of above average temperatures. When we look at the 8 to 14 day forecast is when things could change a little bit. But even so here, only a 30 to 40% chance for below average temperatures, potentially for the upper Midwest, for the northern plains, and for the Pacific Northwest. So really not honing in on something extremely historic yet, but wow, we gotta watch the GFS model in future model runs. That's a given. But also, look at the Climate Prediction Center here for Tucson, a 70% chance for above average precipitation. For southeastern Arizona, look at this. For Santa Fe, for Denver, definitely a likelihood chance for above average rainfall, or in this case, snowfall for the higher elevations. And for the eastern half of the U.S., especially the eastern seaboard, likely above, including into the 8 to 14 day. See, we might see some big storms out here for this the eastern seaboard, potentially maybe some nor'easters. We got to see if that actually happens. But anyways, thank you all for tuning in to today's video on the first day of January. This means the first video of the year has been released on this YouTube channel. If you guys really like the content and you want to see more, please consider subscribing. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button right now. Hit the like button and share this video with your family and friends on social media. As always, thank you for tuning in to today's weather forecast from the home weather office here in California. I'll be back with you more tomorrow.